Welcome to the 3-day webinar series called Ecosystem Services, Practical Applications for Civil Servants in the Western Balkans region, organized by the Montenegrin NGO Center for Climate Change, Natural Resources and Energy at the University of Donja Gorica here in the capital city of Podgorica, with the support from German Organization for International Cooperation, GIZ. And before, just a second, I will turn off the microphones of those who haven't. Okay, great. The webinar was created specifically with public servants and CSO activists from the Western Balkans in mind, in order to arm them with the understanding of needed ideas and proper tools to integrate the topic of ecosystem services into their work. We felt that this concept, which is the bridge between nature protection and meeting the needs of the humans, has a lot to offer in a region where biodiversity agenda is marginalized, making way to short-sighted resource exploitation and acting without previous planning with the whole context in mind. In the past year, and longer, experts from all over the region that you will get to know in the following 3 days have been doing research and compiling relevant information into useful resources with great potential to help you in practice. So the practical aspect was very important to us while creating the content that we'll present to you in the following days. That is why it brings us a really great joy to see a high level of interest for our webinar, and that among all of you participants, there are also those who don't live and don't come from the Western Balkans territory. So thank you for your interest today. This event is being organized as part of the project Development of an Educational Program for Civil Servants on Ecosystem Services, their assessment, evaluation, and integration into development planning, with the support from GIZ. And to start the event, I'd like to invite Mr. Ekrem Husseini to address us all on behalf of GIZ. Mr. Husseini is the country coordinator for Kosovo for the Biodiversity Project under the Open Regional Fund for Southeast Europe. He started to work with GIZ more than 20 years ago on various positions concerning Kosovo's development of the economy, employment, and specific industries such as tourism. He was in charge of the implementation of the internationally awarded cross-border project Peaks of the Balkan between Albania, Kosovo, and Montenegro. Since 2017, Mr. Husseini works on the project of biodiversity under the Open Regional Fund for Southeast Europe. Currently, he is in charge of the sub-project Transboundary Ecosystem Management implemented in the triangle area between Albania, Kosovo, and North Macedonia, and ESAV, where all 6 Western Balkan countries are involved. Mr. Husseini, welcome.
Thank you very much, Angela, for your kind presentation. Hello to everybody, and I'm really very much surprised to have you all here in this webinar. And I would like to welcome you all also on behalf of the project manager, Mrs. Verena Sommer, who could not attend today's meeting, unfortunately. As you are informed, maybe our project is a project called Open Regional Fund and the implementation of biodiversity agreements, and this is also our project goal. So what we actually do in the project.
Sorry, Mr. Husseini, we can't see your video in case you want to turn it on.
Yes, why not?
Okay.
Just
Thank you.
let me. Yes. So once again, welcome to all of you. And as I said, our project aims to strengthen the cooperation between the Western Balkan countries, meaning 6 countries in the Western Balkans predominantly, in their path toward fulfillment of international obligations, with particular focus to the EU obligations when it comes to the preservation of biodiversity. As a project, it started 2016, and for the time being, it has 5 major sub-projects which I'm going to introduce shortly. And I see some of my colleagues are also here present. Maybe they can also add something. But since the time is limited and we want to proceed with the webinar, just let me remind you or inform you shortly that one of the sub-projects is Biodiversity Task Force, who has been established 2017 as an advisory body of the Regional Working Group on Environment under the RCC. And it's comprised of members of relevant ministries for environment of the 6 Western Balkan countries. What we do actually is we strengthen their capacities in order to enable regional cooperation in implementing and mainstreaming the biodiversity policies and international agreements, so they act in a way as a hub between, let's say, the ministries and the Regional Cooperation Council as such. Another sub-project is BIMER, Biodiversity Information Management and Reporting, where we have created a regional platform for exchange and cooperation between the Western Balkan countries, having in mind that the information management and reporting towards the international, conventions is still not that unified to the degree that we would like to. Hence, we strengthen their capacities of the institutions in the countries to have better information and management and reporting system. Our support is concentrated in the joint development of regional guidelines, policy papers, and of course increase of transparency at the regional level. Another sub-project is BioNet. It's a network or a platform of civil society organizations in the region, and it's comprised of 14 member NGOs from the Western Balkan countries. We support also their capacities and increase their capacities toward a role of the NGOs in the decision-making processes in the countries, but also at the regional level. And of course, they promote very intensively the nature conservation through social media, where they are very much active. Another component of this, another sub-project of the project of ORF BDU is transboundary ecosystem management. It's a, so to say, a local approach between Albania, Northern Macedonia, and Kosovo. We have supported the establishment of structures, so-called local action groups, who are focused on environment protection, and we have also strengthened their capacities in drafting and implementing cross-border projects, of course, with focus on biodiversity protection. And last but not least, and also why we are here today, it's, as Angela called, ESAV. Our approach in this sub-project is to increase the capacities of public servants in the relevant ministries, agencies, or managements of protected areas in understanding and applying ESAV into development planning. And we have had in this, and we are so to say, we are going on two dimensions. At once, in one of the activity bundle, we have supported the creation of a guideline. I mean, of a regional guideline. I mean, how to evaluate and how to use the ecosystem services into development planning, which will be presented also the last day of this webinar, but as well the strengthening of capacities of public servants, as Angela mentioned, of the institutions, who then would integrate these ecosystem services into the development planning. Having drafted the guideline, we are also testing it in a way in practical conditions. So we are for the moment we are bringing to an end the 2 case studies which actually serve as a testing for the guideline. It is Bosut forests in a cross-border protected area between Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia, and Orion, also a protected area. And I'm also glad to inform once again those who maybe don't know that in the course of our project and this testing, the Orion part from the Bosnian side has been also declared as a protected area. So additional value to our project, I would say, and also to our efforts in integrating ecosystem services into development planning. So this would be in short from my side, and once again to all of you, a very, very, very successful webinar in the upcoming 2 or 3 days. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Husseini, for kind wishes and a really, really nice presentation of all the wonderful work that you do. And now it's time for us to begin with today's lectures. When structuring this webinar, our plan was to go from introducing the main concepts to you, to go more and more in depth, creating like sort of a funnel for you. So in the end, you are armed with an array of applicable tool sets and concepts that you will understand and you will be able to use in your work. So make sure to stay with us until the end of the whole event. So for the introductory part, so the person who will be introducing you with the concept of ecosystem services will be our PhD, Maria Vukdelic from University of Donja Gorica in Montenegro. Maria holds a bachelor's degree and a PhD degree in conservation biology from University of East Anglia, UK. She has 20 years of experience in nature protection sector through policy development, species protection, and establishment and management of protected areas. Maria's current work focuses on the assessment and valuation of ecosystem services and their mainstreaming into policies and educational programs. During her presentation, please make use of the chat box because we will have the part for the discussion later, and make sure to ask all the questions, give in your insights and all the stories from your practice that are relevant to her presentation. So, Mrs. Vukdelic, welcome.
Okay, well, hello everybody. I hope you can hear me. Angela, can you confirm? Okay. So on behalf of myself and on behalf of the hosting organizations, the Center for Climate Change, Natural Resources and Energy and University of Donja Gorica from Montenegro, I would also like to welcome you and to thank you for taking interest in this webinar and for dedicating your valuable time to attending this event. As Angela said, I will give you the brief overview of ecosystem services. So my presentation will be sort of more theoretical, but it's really just setting the scene or the stage for what we will be talking about in the following days. So I will just share my presentation with you. I hope you can see this. Okay. So, yeah, I'm sure you all or at least most of you come from the environmental background. So you have at some point of your work come across the concept of ecosystem services. And I'm sure you've read some literature, you've came across the concept, you came across different definitions of this concept. Ecosystem services have been defined in various ways over the years, but if you kind of look at all these definitions, they boil up to the same thing. The essence of all these definitions is that ecosystem services are the benefits that humans obtain from the living nature. Now, I would like to highlight two aspects of this definition. First is that this is benefits to humans, and I will talk more about it in the second part of my presentation. And the second main aspect is that the ecosystem services are derived from the living nature, from biodiversity. In other words, from all the plants and animals and microbes and their interactions out there in the nature. So to illustrate how the living nature provides us with ecosystem services, let's go somewhere where there is no living nature. Let's go to Mars. I'm sure you've heard all that many space agencies are making plans to send humans on Mars. At this point, it's all in the stage of, preparing the technologies and testing. But let's just sort of fast forward a couple of years in the future. Let's just say that we managed to provide all the technology to overcome all these technological barriers and to actually put people on Mars. So what will these people need to survive and to live? Well, obviously they would need some air. They would need to sort of bring some air or to bring some sort of technology that will make air for them to breathe, because the Martian atmosphere is not suitable for us. And this technology will also be, will have to be able not only to create the air to breathe, but also to filter it, to remove all the dust and particles and other gases that will be produced from other machines in this closed system. Secondly, obviously, these people would need water. Now they would initially probably have to bring some water with them on Earth. They might be able to find some on Mars, but they will, in order to drink it, to use it, this water will need to be filtered. So once again, they would need to have a technology, they would need to have some kind of a device to filter water, to remove all the impurities and toxic matters so that they can drink it. And finally, obviously, they would need some food to eat. So, you know, even if they bring some stock with them from Earth, once they're there, if they want to settle permanently or at least long term, they would need to grow their own food. So they would need, again, the systems where this food will have to be grown. They need some kind of a substrate for it. They also need to bring some seeds from the earth, but this can't be just any seeds. This needs to be seeds of plants who will be able to live and grow in Martian environment. The seeds, the plants that will be exposed to completely different gravity, to different air pressure, to different regime of light and dark and seasons up there on Mars. So they will really need to have the genetic makeup to be able to grow and to produce food. And also, if they want to produce this food sort of long term, and if these plants are to reproduce, they would need to bear fruit. They would need to create seeds in themselves. So these guys will probably at some point need to go from one plant to take a brush and take a pollen from one flower and put it on the another. So basically to waste their time doing this instead of maybe exploring Mars or doing something else. So let's just say they manage to have all these technologies, and they, you know, that they bring from Earth, and they install, and they produce air, they produce water, they produce food, so they survive. But will they be happy? Will these guys live a happy life? You know, will they be content to just stay inside this closed environment, to stay inside this little dome, to see the same people day after day after day? You know, will they start going crazy? And if so, will they have an opportunity to go outside for a walk, for, I don't know, to enjoy this new landscape? Will they miss all the greens and the blues and all the colors from Earth? Will their mental health suffer? Will they start turning on each other and, I don't know, screaming and getting at each other's throats? So, you know, what, even if they're able to survive, what will be the quality of their life? And obviously, these technologies might overcome some of these barriers when there is no living nature around. We might make a machine that will make air and water and help us grow food. But back home, all these services are there. They're provided to us, not by technology. They're provided by plants and animals. They're provided by landscapes. They give us this opportunity to survive, but they also give us the opportunity to live a nice, good quality life, to be happy, to go outside, to relax, to have a good mental and physical life, and to have a good social relations with the people that surround us. And once again, even if we manage to produce all this technology to help us survive where there's no nature, and maybe even help us have a quality life where there is no nature, this technology would come with a huge, huge price tag. And it might help a small group of people in a little sort of community on Mars, but it certainly wouldn't be enough to cover or to produce life or produce conditions for survival and good life for the whole of Mars as a planet. And as I said, back here on Earth, we have all these services and they come for free. So how does this living nature obtain or give us, provide us with all these services? Well, first of all, we use living organisms directly. Well, obviously, and most obviously, we eat them. So every food item on our plate has at some point been a living organism. It has been a plant or an animal or a fungi or a part of it. So, you know, the food that we eat is actually as I said, at some point been an organism that has been grown and developed and used for our consumption eventually. But we also use other things from biodiversity, from living organisms. We use them as fuel. We cut trees to burn them to obtain energy for cooking or for heating to stay warm. We also obtain fibers from the living organisms. Cotton and linen and silk and wool have all again come from and be produced by plants and animals. Various other materials that we use, timber for construction, wood for making furniture, oils, resins, and things like that, dyes, we obtain directly from the living organisms and use them for various purposes. We obtain medicines from living organisms. We extract the biochemical substances that are product of their metabolic processes, and we use them in pharmacy, we use them in medicine to try to cure certain diseases. We use them as ornaments. You know, we plant, put plants in our gardens or in our living rooms, or make souvenirs from them because they give us some kind of a pleasure. But how are these goods created? They're created by this really amazing biological processes that take place in nature. The fact that we have food to eat is owing to this amazing ability of plants to take all this inorganic matter from the environment, to take the carbon and oxygen and hydrogen and nitrogen from air, from water, from soil, to mix it up, to use the energy of sun to transform this matter into sugars that fuel life, and then to make also all these other organic compounds which make this biomass, and which is then further transformed through trophic chains and through metabolic processes within the organisms, and as I said, as it moves through trophic or food chains, this matter is transformed. And this is an amazing and unique property of life, of living organisms, because they're making these nutrients, these elements available for our consumption or for use for our different purposes. And also the quality and quantity of all the materials that we can obtain from living organisms is also very linked with their ability to produce it. This ability is written in their genes. So the diverse genes, diverse genetic combinations will give us the diversity of these products, will give us the quantities of these products, will give us the quality of these products. So, you know, once again, the instructions and the diversity of the instructions that are within these living organisms will produce the goods in sufficient quality and quantity so that we can use it. But apart from just basic survival, our quality of life is affected by other things, and the biodiversity can provide these other things as well. First of all, biodiversity can give us water for drinking. Now, water in itself is not an ecosystem service. It's an inorganic substance that has been on our planet even before the life was created. It's out there in space, apparently it's out there on Mars. But the water for drinking, which means that it's available in sufficient quantities and it has a certain quality, so that it's not contaminated, is affected by the presence of biodiversity, because the presence of plants will help this water retain or stay or remain in one place, and also it will help purify it so that we can then consume it safely and use it in that way. But also the good life or the quality life is a safe life. It's a life that is safe from natural hazards. So let's say if you live next to a river or a lake where the water level fluctuates, if there is some kind of a wetland or a riparian forest around this water body, if the water starts to rise, it will act as a sponge. It will absorb all this excess water and it won't reach your house. It won't affect your life. It won't make a damage to your property or maybe create some health hazard. If you live at the bottom of the mountain, the forest that is up the slope will help prevent the erosion and landslides. So, you know, it can shelter us from all these natural calamities like floods and landslides and erosion and extreme weather events like flash floods or extreme storms. So the biodiversity can provide us safety. Also, biodiversity gives us the good quality of environment or enhances the environmental quality. The plant leaves absorb particles and harmful gases from the atmosphere. They filter water. They decontaminate the soils. So basically it makes the elements of environment that we use safe and safe for use. It makes the air clean, it makes the water clean, it makes the soil, they make the soils clean. Biodiversity gives us opportunities to learn, to study, to study all these different processes that are typical for life, to help us answer questions like where do we come from, how life has evolved, whether there is life up there in the space, or how we can perform or continue life on other planets. Also, biodiversity gives us all this aesthetic enjoyment. It gives us opportunities for recreation. If we are stressed, we will go out for a walk and enjoy the view, enjoy the trees, the bird song, the landscape. We will go swimming, we will go fishing, we will go kayaking or hiking and biking. And once again, all this aesthetic pleasure or this opportunity for recreation comes from the fact that there is some nature, that there are some plants and animals that we can look at and enjoy. And the biodiversity gives us this sense of sort of being and belonging. We can identify with certain landscapes or with particular species. Canadians probably tremble each time they see a maple leaf. So, you know, we all, certain biodiversity can kind of anchor us to a place, can help us create this sense of belonging to somewhere and not just being, you know, like this isolated human being. So as you can see, all the things that I've listed come under this term of ecosystem services. And some of these services are direct goods. They are the things that we can actually go to nature and pick, cut, consume, wear, you know, like they're material goods that are being provided to us by nature. So this would be all these provisioning services, all these direct products that we get from living organisms, which again is the product of life processes happening in there. But also, apart from just being able to survive, you know, we need the good quality life, and the good quality life is affected by, as I said, being safe. So all these regulating services, all this ability of ecosystems to provide us shelter and safety and clean environment is also considered an ecosystem services. And also the ability to give us this aesthetic enjoyment, opportunities for recreation, opportunities to maintain our mental and physical health. It's also an ecosystem services, and it falls under this group of cultural services. And then there are all these background basic biological processes like photosynthesis, like metabolic processing, like nutrient cycling, that is making all of these other services possible. Now there is a debate whether these supporting services are services at all, but let's just use this classification and say that yes, life would not be possible and other services would not be possible if the nature does not do these fundamental biological processes. So, as I said, the services that we obtain are derived from the presence of biodiversity. It's derived from the presence of species. It's derived from the genes that make them up. It's derived from the interactions that these species form within each other or with their living, non-living environment, So all this, as I say, biodiversity structure and processes provide the basis for functions. So to illustrate this, let's consider the forest. The structure of the forest is there because there are trees. There are, you know, this tree species, let's say beech or fir or whatever. And also there are other organisms that live there and that make up this forest. And also the interactions that these forests, these species are forming with each other, and all these biological processes that are taking place are giving opportunity, are sort of providing a basis for the function. So the presence of the trees and the fact that they have roots in the soil can give the basis for erosion prevention, or for water retention, or for water purification. The fact that there are leaves to absorb the particles and gases from atmosphere is a function of clearing the air or purifying the air. The production of biomass is a function which can be translated into our use of this biomass for fuel or for timber or for other materials. So as I said, these structures and the processes are basis for a function. But here we come to this second important aspect of ecosystem services. And it's the fact that ecosystem services are defined in relation to people. So this is a human construct, and basically whether something will be ecosystem services, whether a certain function of an ecosystem will be an ecosystem service depends on people. It depends whether there is somebody to benefit from it. So a function of a forest, let's say a water retention or a timber production, is an ecosystem services only if there's somebody who benefits from it. If there's some kind of community, doesn't matter if it's local or regional or global, who actually exploits this biomass and turns it into a certain value. So this is usually presented with this sort of a cascade model. So we have biodiversity out there in the nature, which has this structure and it has all these processes, and these are turned into functions. But functions are a basis for ecosystem services. They're provided the basic sort of environmental background on which ecosystem services can be produced. But whether it will be an ecosystem services, whether it will be turned into a service and a value depends on whether there are humans that are using it, that are benefiting from it. So, you know, an ecosystem service, as I said, would be a service, or let's say water retention would be a service if there are people who are using this water for drinking. Timber production would be a service only if there are humans who are actually exploiting it. Now, these links in nature are usually not so simple and linear, so we can't always clearly show that the link between the biodiversity structure and processes and the function, and we can't really often see if it produces ecosystem services in a nice and linear way. Also, ecosystem services are a very dynamic concept. Their supply and demand change in time and space. First, because the natural processes change in time and space. And secondly, also because human preferences change in time and space. Consider hunting. Years ago, hunting was an activity where people were hunting wildlife to survive, to eat. Yeah. So you could say that the wildlife at that point was a provisioning service. You know, it was food. But nowadays, this hunting has lost this kind of value, or it's not considered as a provisioning service. It's not considered something that is important for our survival. But there are people who go hunting for recreational purposes. So this kind of ecosystem service changed or shifted from being the provisioning to cultural, because the societal preferences has changed. There are still parts of the world where hunting is a sort of a provisioning service, if I can say, or wildlife provides us with food. But you can see that how this shifts in depending on what society needs or perceives as a benefit. Also, the ecosystem services have this spatial mismatch. They can be produced at one place, but consumed somewhere completely elsewhere. Or they can be produced in one time and the benefits of them felt in another time. So if you consider, let's say, erosion prevention, it's produced up in the mountain, but the people that benefit are living down in the valley or below the mountain. So not in the same place where this service is being produced. And also there's so much connectivity and complexity in nature. I mean, everything in nature is connected, and you never know where these links are. And if you sort of cut one link, how it will affect the other. There's so much complexity, which makes this concept of ecosystem services sometimes hard to elucidate, hard to distinguish between what is really nature, what is the service, what is the benefit. So why bother with this concept? Why apply it if it's like so complicated? Well, the good thing about this concept is that it illustrates the contribution of nature to our well-being and survival. So it clearly shows how nature can help us not only survive, but have a good and quality life, how it can affect all the components of our well-being. Now, this concept can also reveal all these hidden or invisible benefits that we obtain from the nature. We have, I mean, the humanity has moved and continues to move to cities. So we are losing this direct contact with nature, and we are starting to forget what it gives to us. We are starting to forget all these benefits that we get from it. And this concept is kind of there to remind us about this, to remind us that yes, the water and the food and the clean air and everything, it comes from the nature, and the nature helps us help maintain it and keep it at a good quality for our own use. So as such, this concept can reconcile this need for nature protection with the need for development. It also highlights the complexity and all these interdependencies in nature, which further stress the need for protection of nature in all of its forms. Now, I don't need to tell you that nature is in crisis. We are all aware of it. But even so, not enough effort has been made to protect nature. And one of the reasons is maybe exactly this, that we forgot or we don't see what nature gives to us. We don't see how our lives, how our survival, how the quality of our lives is directly dependent on the nature. So this concept has evolved and continues to evolve exactly for this reason, to help us remind ourselves, to help us remember the importance of nature, to help us remember how important it is, so that it can be properly factored in all the plans and policies that we are having for the future. And if we are talking about sustainable development and sustainability in any of its forms, then the nature needs to be part of it. It needs to be given space to produce, to function properly, so that it can produce all these services that we benefit from. So, as I said, with this, I have given you like the basic background of what this concept is. And in the next presentations, my colleague Sanya will give you more about the history of the concept. And tomorrow we will go more into some practical things of how this concept can be actually used and applied and integrated into planning and policy and all the human activities. So thank you for your attention. I think we have time for a few questions, but I will leave Angela to moderate this part.
Thank you so much, Maria. It was a really, really wonderful presentation. Now I would like to open the floor to anyone who has a question related to the presentation. I will also remind you that we will have a more thorough time allocated for discussion after the second presentation. But if there's anything that you want to add, that you feel is related to the content that Maria spoke about, or you really feel like should be addressed early on, please feel free to do it.
May I?
Of course.
Actually, we are all a bit stressed because this is also for us a new learning process, and we may forget something. What I wanted to say at the beginning, and I missed them actually, to thank all the also all the experts who were part of this project. Actually, as maybe most of you already know, we started this as a training with a physical presence, so for public servants from the region, and then the circumstances actually made us change the concept, I mean, fully. And that's why I would like to thank the experts, and first of all those who are present here: Maria, Jovana, Jenan, Sanya, and Avni, but also those who had worked actually together in the conceptualizing of the training, meaning in addition to these persons also Yuna, Katerina, and Mladen. And also a special thank to a person that is present today. It's Lucy Emerton, who is our international expert involved in the project, more or less in at least two of its components. And she is here today, and maybe later she would also come to she would have some time also to present or maybe to recap the presentation. So this would be from my side. Just I forgot at the beginning due to the maybe to the stress and the time limitations. Thank you very much once again from my side.
Thank you, Ekrem.
Thank you so much.
If I can sort of interrupt, I see that Kun asked about the spatial and temporal mismatch. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we do.
Okay, sorry. Okay, because my screen just froze. So basically, this is the fact that ecosystem services can be produced in one place, like for instance within the forest, but the effects of it are felt somewhere downstream or in another community. That's why it makes them sometimes it makes it hard to determine what is an ecosystem service, where it's produced, and if you want to protect a certain environment or a piece of nature because of it, then you have to look at these spatial and temporal mismatches. Produced at one point but felt at another. I'm just trying to think of an example. Maybe I don't know, somebody else can help me here, Lucy or someone. But
I think a classic example is look at forest watershed protection. Maybe your protected area management authority or your local community is assuring that service, but they're not receiving the benefits. Those benefits are felt off-site and often in a different temporal frame. And I think that's a classic, because of course that underlies the whole challenge of how do you give the providers of that ecosystem service an incentive or a reward for the valuable service they're providing.
Yeah, so yeah, this creates like additional complications for the management and for protection of nature and ecosystem services. But yeah, as I said, I just wanted to explain what it means, because this is something that has to be taken into consideration when planning and when you actually do the practical aspect of the work. So I hope I managed to answer this question. If not, maybe we can discuss this later or in a private chat box, because I think we are running out of time for this Q&A session.
Oh, we have a bit more time
Okay,
you have one more question. Temporal, can it be coal?
Okay, now coal is in the fossil fuel type of thing, yeah? Is that is that something?
Yeah.
Okay, well, like the fossil fuels are not really considered an ecosystem service. Yes, in theory, they are a product of nature, you know. They used to be living organisms at some point that turned into this energy-rich material. But the way the ecosystem services are defined, the fossil fuels like the oil and coal and natural gas are not considered ecosystem service. Probably because it's like it takes so much time to produce them that it doesn't become feasible to observe them as a ecosystem service. And so yeah, I mean, they are not really, as I say, considered in this respect. They are not really considered an ecosystem service. So we don't discuss them. We don't tackle them in this manner when we talk about ecosystem services or nature protection or environmental management in this sense.
Great. Okay, Bianca, who asked, said thank you. So that's it. Many thanks to you, Maria, for a really wonderful presentation, and many thanks to everyone for such kind feedback. We are really, really happy to see that all of you have gained a lot of value from the first presentation. I see a few more comments coming in from Maria and Adamu. If it's okay with you, we will return to them and we will begin our discussion after the second presentation with those questions, just to make sure we will stay on time. So thank you very much. Now we will proceed to the second presentation. Thank you once again. Our second lecture for today will build on the foundation that Maria just set with her thorough explanations of the concept and types of ecosystem services. And we will dive deeper into the history of this concept, as well as the important global, regional, and national policies that address it. So we will learn about it from our next lecturer, Sanja Pokrajac, who is a living European rivers nature-based solutions coordinator from the Worldwide Fund for Nature. So Sanja holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a master's degree in biodiversity and conservation from University of the West of England and University of Leeds in the United Kingdom. She has 13 years of experience in the nature protection sector, through policy development, implementation of transboundary projects, and for the past 7 years, ecosystem management and nature-based solutions. Sanja's current work is based on applying nature-based solutions on European level for freshwater ecosystems. So Sanja, welcome.
Thank you very much for introduction. I hope you can see me and hear me. Okay, excellent. Let me just share my presentation with you. I don't need to say anything more in terms of introduction because we had Angela has said it so nicely, and I think Maria has also said a little bit of what I will speak about. So, in terms of really setting the frame to the concept, I will talk about. Okay, how do I do this? I need to enlarge my screen. Okay. Okay, so I would like to frame this concept as also this part of the introductory day. I would like to frame the concept of ecosystem services into a policy context to give you a bit of a background and to give you some information that could be useful in your future work. Okay, I don't know why it's doing this, but in the presentation, it will just be like really a brief history of ecosystem services, but then we will focus a little bit more on the policy context. And as Maria said, tomorrow you will hear a little bit more about what ESAF is and about the practical application. But today, this will be a context to kind of frame it all in. So just a little bit on history. So the concept is, well, it's not new. It has started really turning up a while ago. So even in the 70s, it started appearing. So maybe with a different name, maybe not ecosystem services, maybe it was nature services, maybe it was benefits from nature, but the concept started evolving in the 70s. But it was not really until the 90s that it was really broadly accepted and that it became the focus of many articles. Its first introduction into policy was in the Convention of Biological Diversity. So it was the first, let's say, major appearance in policies. And in 2010, the parties to the Convention of Biological Diversity adopted this strategic plan for biodiversity to 2020, which is a 10-year framework for action by all countries and stakeholders to safeguard biodiversity and the benefits it provides to people. So I think that was the first, let's say, the first a major appearance of ecosystem services in the policies. Just after that, in 1997, there were these two really important, two really major articles that inflicted a lot of influence and have been cited so many times in ecosystem services. So it's Gretchen Daly, Nature Services, and Robert Costanza, which put the economic value on ecosystem services. Of course, then these two people have worked together. They have co-authored many other articles which you can find, but I think these two were really important. They kind of made a breakthrough and put it into a spotlight in the research community. But then, of course, the major milestone for ecosystem services was the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. So this was a study that provided a really comprehensive global assessment of human impacts on ecosystems and their services, and the analysis of ecosystem conditions and trends, as well as possible solutions for restoration, and of course their maintenance and their sustainable use. But this was in 2005. Already in 2005, the key finding of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment was that 60% of the ecosystem services that were evaluated are being degraded or used unsustainably. So the situation has not improved. If anything, it is even worse now, which is why the importance of really highlighting these concepts in policies is really important. So the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment is the first one who categorized ecosystem services into the categories that we are using more or less now: the supporting, provisioning, regulating, and cultural services. So Maria has talked about it in a little bit more detail, but this is where it comes from. So the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment actually defined them, and I'm sure quite a lot of you are aware of this picture and of this categorization. So yes, that is the first time it appeared in 2005. Then of course we have the TEEB, so that's a little bit later on, a couple of years later. The importance of TEEB is that it brought the economic perspective of ecosystem services in the policy debate. This study was performed by a huge network of international experts and also people from different let's say fields: the science, the economics, and the policy. So the most important thing about TEEB is that it highlighted the economic value of ecosystems and brought in the costs that would arise from ecosystem degradation. Of course, then there are many reports that did. I think it's on my next page, and it's quite useful. So it's for ecological and economic foundations, the policy, national and international policy, local regional policy, business and enterprise, and the one, let's say, the synthesis report, which covers it all. After that, there were some also national TEEB studies that were completed. So I think that was the main, let's say, achievement of TEEB, to put this economic perspective here. Then we have the mapping and assessment of ecosystem services that was established by the European Commission to support the implementation of the Action 5 of the EU Biodiversity Strategy, the 2020 Biodiversity Strategy, and it was an expert group to map the ecosystems, to assess the ecosystem condition, also to assess the ecosystem services and provide an integrated assessment. So that was for the, let's say, for the 2020 biodiversity strategy in particular. So the target 2 and the section 5 was that ecosystems and their services should be maintained and enhanced by establishing green infrastructure and restoring at least 15% of degraded ecosystems. So we have the policy, we have the targets, but the implementation on the ground is really lagging. And the mentioned target that MICE was based on is to improve knowledge of ecosystems and their services in EU. And by 2020, by this year, the member states should have assessed the economic value of ecosystem services and promote their integration into accounting and reporting systems at EU and national level. Of course, that also unfortunately falls short. Moving on, now we have the new EU Biodiversity Strategy, the 2030 Biodiversity Strategy, and it does have quite an ambitious goals. It comes from the accounting that the world lost 3.5 to 18.5 trillion euros per year in ecosystem services, and this is from 1997 to 2011. So it's due to the land cover change, and the land degradation also accounts to 5.5 to 10.5 trillion euros per year just from land degradation. When we're talking about diversity, the biodiversity loss really results in reduced crop yields in fisheries, in fish catches. It increases economic losses from flooding and other disasters, so in disaster risk reduction, and also the loss of potential new sources of medicine. So to address this, there will be a new EU nature restoration plan. The EU restoration plan, what is new about this, that it plans to put forward a proposal for legally binding restoration targets. So there will be legally binding targets to restore the degraded ecosystems, and I think in particular it will be focused on the potential to capture and store carbon, and also in disaster risk reduction. That will be the main focus, but of course it will always bring out other benefits and other ecosystem services just by default. So the impact assessment for the EU Nature Restoration Plan will look at the possibility of the European methodology to map and assess and achieve good condition of ecosystems so they can deliver multiple benefits. So the climate regulation, the water regulation, soil health, pollination, disaster prevention, and of course, many others. What we also have to really think about is that it's all related to sustainable development goals. And in terms of sustainable development goals, I think it's really important to see the society and the economy as really embedded in the biosphere. So they are not separate from the biosphere itself, and that's where the sustainable development goals come in. And it's just kind of changing the paradigm for development, and it's moving away from the sectoral approach where you look at social and economic and ecological development as separate parts. They're not separate parts. It's all very interconnected, and we need to think about the economy, that it serves the society, but it's also operating in the, let's say, safe operating space of the planet. Moving on, then of course we have the Paris Agreement. It sets out the global framework for mitigating climate change effects by limiting global warming. So in the Paris Agreement, the ecosystem conservation actually emerged as a key tool for slowing down climate change, but also adapting to its consequences. And of course, yeah, it goes back to sustainable development through preserving healthy ecosystem services. So, I mean, we have all the EU and its member states are all parties to the Paris Agreement, but also there's about 190 parties from all over the world towards the Paris Agreement. So it's a very useful tool because it provides it accounts for ecosystem services and restoration through national adaptation plans and intended nationally determined contributions. So I think it's a very nice entry point for the countries who are signatories of Paris Agreement to, it's a nice entry point for ecosystem services. Moving on, we're going to look at some international cooperation networks. This is the Ecosystem Services Partnership, and it has been launched quite a while ago, and it has a lot of members. It was formed by institutional and individual networks from all over the world. So it's a global network which aims to enhance cooperation in the field of ecosystem services by organizing conferences, trainings, data, and experience exchange. I think conferences will probably have to wait a little bit, but I think they should probably change their description to webinars. Moving on, another cooperation network is IPBES. It is also a global network. So it's a platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services, and it's been established in 2012, and it's administered by UNEP. So its aim is to strengthen the science and policy interface for biodiversity and ecosystem services, and it has performed many assessments at regional and global level. So really what it does is assess the state of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And I think it is also supported by more than 100 governments all over the world. Then, of course, this is the European one, the Biodiversity Information System for Europe. It has some information on completed and ongoing initiatives at EU and national level regarding mapping of ecosystems and ecosystem services. Then we have the OPLA. It's an open platform. It's a new knowledge marketplace where the latest thinking on ecosystem services and natural capital and nature-based solutions is brought together. So what it is, it's an online database on cases. So if you go there, you can find interesting cases. You can filter them per your interests, whether it's the societal challenge or whether it's per ecosystem service. It holds also some publications. It holds some projects. And as I said, you can see you can filter it by scale, ecosystem type, applied methods. It's very useful to find out what's going on, but also to get some ideas. Then this is the common international classification on ecosystem services. I think when it sort of came, when ecosystem services came into focus, I think the need has arisen to actually classify it in a way that would be accepted and just to all use the same terminology, let's say. So the classification services are grouped according to the 3 sections that related to the contributions to human well-being support the provisioning, the regulation and maintenance of the environment for humans, or the non-material characteristics of ecosystems that affect physical and mental states of people, which is the cultural significance. I think it also really nicely goes back to frames what Maria was talking about in her presentation. So it's a standardization really. So that's what it is. Then if we want to talk about DS concept in regional and national policy, since this is such a varied group of people from all over the world, it was not possible to actually analyze the policies on a regional national level. But what I can just point out that ecosystem services, or by the other name, benefits from nature, or whatever they are called, healthy and resilient ecosystems, or they can be found in policies such as environment protection, biodiversity protection strategies. It can be in climate policy, it can be in water policy, it can be in sustainable development policy, marine policy, pollution, and what I also forgot to put here is the disaster risk reduction. I forgot to put this on the slide. So there's an array of policies which you can use as a background if you want to really use ecosystem services in your work. So there are a lot of tools out there. So this was just let's say a brief overview. And when we go down to national level, so it will be, I don't need to repeat it, it's pretty much as on the regional level. So all of the all of the policies that I mentioned for the regional level would probably apply to national level. Plus, you could look on national level in different sectoral policies. It will depend on your country. So it could also be found on national level in sectoral policies. So with this, I would really like to end this introductory part. As we said, you will hear more about the tools tomorrow, and the practical application of ESAV. And just for the end, I would really like to find out, since we have such an array of people from different countries, what about national policies in your country? Do they reflect ecosystem services? How do you find it in your work? So that's just something that we can maybe talk about. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sanya. I have just typed these questions that you mentioned in the chat box. So to all of our participants now, it's time for the Q&A session after Sanya's presentation, which will kind of be the segue us into the discussion on everything that we have covered so far on today's webinar. So what are your thoughts on Sanya's presentation? Are there any relevant or national policies that treat ecosystem services in your country that you would like to point out? And do you rely on them in the work that you do, whether it's through an institution, a civic organization, or in any other way that you would like to share with us? Okay, while people are typing, I would just go back to the comments people made previously to, Maria is asking for a word. Yes, of course.
Okay, so I will just maybe give a few comments just to illustrate what Sanya is asking. For instance, here in Montenegro, the concept of ecosystem services has been integrated in this like political and strategic framework. So we have the articles of the law on nature protection and on the law for national parks. So we have an article in each one of these laws that specifically defines ecosystem services. This concept has also been defined or tackled in our National Strategy for Sustainable Development, which is kind of like an umbrella, a strategic document, and also obviously in the Strategy for Biodiversity Protection. So, you know, and then also the sectoral strategies, now they don't sometimes specifically or explicitly state ecosystem services, but there are things that are ecosystem services, like the forestry strategy obviously talks about timber production, but also about these other functions of forests that needs to be preserved, like soil erosion prevention and things like that. So, you know, the point of this whole presentation and this introduction is just to tell you that ecosystem services are there. They are being introduced into this political and legal and institutional and strategic frameworks of different countries. And if you do want to start applying this concept in your own work, then you have this background, you have this sort of anchor in your national policies. You have the sort of an open space to start doing this. It's obviously differs from country to country, but the point is that yes, you have it. And as I said, this gives you sort of the strength, or at least the starting point to tackle the ecosystem services in whatever you're doing. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you, Maria. We have some insights pouring in. Katerina Atanasovska asked, I would like to share our experience in North Macedonia, by all means.
Okay, can you see me? Can you hear me also? Okay, hello everybody. I want to send my greetings to the Center for Climate Change, Natural Resources and Energy on this wonderful course of webinar, of course, on ecosystem services. I was also, as Ekrem said, part of the team that was working on the guideline for the development of integrating NISF in the management plan and the study for valorization. I just would like to share, of course, our experience about what we are doing in our small country, and also what Sanya mentioned about triggering the discussion for the ecosystem services in the national policies. As Maria said, Also in our country, the ecosystem services are more or less mentioned in the law on nature as what is the definition, and more or less they are connected to the protected areas and somehow on paying of something for ecosystem services that are provided from the protected areas. But also now, because in 2018 we have developed a new strategy on nature protection and also the revision of the national strategy for biodiversity, there are explicitly actions and targets about integrating ecosystem services. And we actually have started by assessing the condition of ecosystems at national level, and then assessment of ecosystem services also on national level. This is everything related to the what is already mentioned in our national both strategies for nature and for biodiversity. Actually, we are working as a country on this topic about ecosystem services from 2008, more or less on some economic valuation of ecosystem services with some kind of studies. But actually, 3 years ago, we have started to work on a national level by trying to establish a very systematic concept, a very systematic establishment of concept of ecosystem services by actually the assessment of ecosystems, the condition of ecosystem services, assessment of ecosystem service, assessment of the condition of ecosystem, assessment of ecosystem services on national level, then one case study on the local level with the development of payment for ecosystem services, and afterward with strengthening the capacities of different stakeholders about ecosystem services with development of modules for what all of this concept is about. So this is actually very brief about the experience in our country, but if you have some questions, we are open to discussion. Thank you, and greetings to all.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Would Sanya or Maria like to add or comment?
No, not really comment, but thanks for sharing.
Thank you then. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have some other feedback coming in as well. Many thanks to everyone who is congratulating our speakers on wonderful presentations. We are glad to see you have been enjoying our content. Park Prirode Vransko Jezero has sent a link saying that this is some info that are a part of our policy in Croatia as a part of the ministry. So there is a link they provided that is related to the situation in Croatia. Thank you. Then Juraj Svajda from Matej Bel University said in Slovakia, the term ecosystem services is mentioned in various legislation, for example, in the Nature and Landscape Protection Act. Thank you so much for sharing that. Park Prirode also shared a link. This is from a project concerning the ecosystem services in karst habitats. Wonderful, thank you. Let's see, is there? Thank you, Mr. Husseini, for the feedback. And Adam Odila said, thanks, Ma, for your shining presentation, especially the route that you made mention about the raise of ES. So thank you. Wonderful. Okay, so for all of you who I am sure have many things to add to the discussion, but maybe do not feel like you want to do it in public, or do not feel like you can do it now on the spot and wish to maybe prepare some other links, or just like do it coherently, not spontaneously, we have prepared a short survey. It will take you just a few minutes to complete it. You can do it while I'm speaking. You can do it later. It all depends on you, but it would really, really be significant to us and help us and guide us in a way to see your background when it comes to the topics we have discussed today. So here is the link to the survey. And as I said, you can do it while we're talking. So It has only 3 questions, all 3 that we have already asked in the chat box as well, and that we have discussed jointly. So Sanja Amanovic said, hello from my side to all participants of the webinar and the hosts. One question, is there connection or will be between the ES policy concept and the new green agenda for the WB6 that will be developed in the next period? So, okay, Sanja or Maria, who would like to address this one?
I'm personally not sure, so I would have to check, but maybe I don't know if Sanja knows, she can answer now. If not, we can provide this this answer.
Are we talking about the new Green Deal or something else? Okay, Christina. Christina can answer the question.
Yes, good morning to everyone. I think that I have a partial answer on this. Indirectly, it will be involved. You are talking about the mirroring strategic document of the Green Deal to the Western Balkans, what is the Green Agenda. Nevertheless, this is a process that is still ongoing. And my colleague Ekrem mentioned at the very beginning that the Biodiversity Task Force for Southeast Europe, that is a regional platform, is contributing and suggesting different aspects to be included in particular, of particular interest for the Western Balkans. And definitely the ecosystem services and a further development and integration into the policy documents, both on regional and national level, is one of the among the key issues. So we really look forward how it will evolve. The first, let's say, big event to give a feedback about it is the high-level segment meeting in Sofia in just a few days. And if it will be approved by the high-level segment of the representatives of the Western Balkans economies, it will be definitely further developed and integrated into the final document.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. Would anyone like to add on this topic while we are here? Okay, in that case, let's proceed to the next question. Kun O asked, EU target to restore 15% of degraded ecosystem. It's very encouraging. Does EU have specific area to restore in priority? So again, here goes.
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. There's not a specific area, but well, there is in some cases in terms of fresh water, they have decided to restore 25,000 kilometers of rivers into their as possible as to natural state. They can be restored, but it's not really focused on any specific area. It's more focused on the societal issues that can be resolved. So where the best benefits will be for people and nature. So it will probably look at a flood risk reduction. It will look at let's say groundwater recharge, and also addressing other societies such as agriculture production, societal challenges such as agriculture production. So it's not a specific area. It will be determined. There's a size, there's a certain limit to the size that needs to be achieved, but not in a specific area. It needs to be determined.
Wonderful.
I hope that answered the question.
I would also like to point out that when you see a question and you feel like you can contribute, just like Christina did, feel free to jump in, feel free to give your comments. This is the time for the discussion as well. So it's not only for our lecturers, but it's for all of you who feel like you can contribute to the conversation. Kuno said, thank you very much, Sanja Pokrajac. Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so is there any other topic that you would like to address while we're here? So please feel free to use the microphone. Please feel free to use the chat. We have time. We are actually right on time, so there's no worry that we should hurry up. Okay, then in that case, I would
Actually,
like
I want to say something. I was looking for the function to raise my hand, but somehow I couldn't find it. So can I also follow up to Kuno's point?
Of course, I was actually just going to announce you, so yeah.
Okay, before I make my formal wrap up, I actually do think Kuno's point and Sanja's response is a really interesting one, because if we're talking about targeting the restoration of degraded ecosystems, whether it's within the context of the EU biodiversity strategy or, you know, Myanmar's forestry master plan or Serbia's wetland restoration plan, I think this is the kind of place that we have to really bring in the ecosystem services concept. And I think this is the kind of way in which it pushes the agenda forward for us, in that it takes the whole debate from just looking at ecology and biology and things like endemicity or habitat or species, all of which are critical, but it reinterprets it also in terms of the whole concept of benefits for nature. And I think one of our big challenges with ecosystem services is how do we actually use that concept of nature's benefits for people to prioritize conservation, restoration, and conservation approaches, and realize that there's a whole wider dimension than just the conservation science. There's also looking at the spatial and temporal and social and economic reception of benefits. And I think that's a really important point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Does anyone want to add to it?
Angela, sorry, I would just like to sort of follow up what Lucy just said. So the reason why in my presentation I was giving such focus to these two things: first, that this is the product of living nature, and secondly, that this is benefit to humans, is exactly to highlight what Lucy said, that nature conservation is a complex issue and that biologists are not enough. Traditionally, it was biologists who were sort of in charge for nature protection, by preparing species checklists and, determining the level of endemic species and things like that. But unfortunately, that is not enough, because humans are part of ecosystems, and all the human needs and the ways and the forms of land use and have to be factored in if you want to preserve nature. And maybe, I know I'm a biologist myself, and maybe, I don't know, at the beginning of my career, I didn't like being said that, biodiversity has this utilitarian value for humans, but unfortunately, that's how things are. There's almost 8 billion people on this planet, and the numbers are growing. So we cannot just, remove them from the planet so that all these lovely endemic endangered species can live. But we can make an effort to try to reconcile these two things. And for that, as I said, we need not just biologists, we need social scientists, economists, etc., 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 policymakers. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If I can actually add from my own background, because I have a background in environmental policy, and most of the work that I do has to do with environmental communication. So bridging the gap between the green agenda and the needs of the people. And from what I've seen, this is a very, very, there's an increase in the focus, which is making me very, very happy, on the fact that the information on its own and the documents on their own have to be turned into things that are easier to consume depending on the target group, their previous knowledge, their previous level of expertise, their current state of both what they're doing, how affluent they are, and then using that information in order to kind of create a green agenda that is tailored to meeting their own needs, so that it doesn't look like it's nature protection versus people creating an abundant life. So I'm very happy to see we have addressed that as well. Now we have some additional questions coming in. Lucy also added that the ES concept demands us to also prioritize nature's benefits to people when we plan for conservation, restoration, etc., and to recognize that we have to factor species, habitats, and biodiversity into our own development policies and plans that want to generate benefits for people. Vuk Markovic added a question. Do you know any example where ES are integrated in a spatial plan and that it curved, impacted, or drove urban development in an opposite direction than it was before ES integration? Or the ES concept is mostly related to nature conservation? Who would like to address this one? Lucy already did, so I'll read it for everyone. Lucy answered, there are, I believe, some very interesting examples from Sweden, and Vietnam has just explicitly integrated ecosystem services into the new law on spatial planning, possibly the only country in the world to do so. And now is operationalizing this in practice by developing spatial plans that actually integrate ES. Thank you so much. Maria added, in Montenegro, we are trying to integrate ES into spatial planning policy, but it is in early stages and the first time, so we can't speak of the effects of it. Thank you so much. Great. Katerina Tanasovska added ES maps in spatial planning, city of Järvenpää, Finland. I'm sorry, I'm completely aware that I've probably pronounced that incorrectly, but it's written here so you can copy it into your browsers. Lucy also added, but I think also interesting that in many cases, the whole integration of ES into urban planning is via the paradigm of gray-green infrastructure or nature-based solutions, not ES per se. Sanya might want to say something on NBS. So Sanya.
Yes. Sure. So in the past years, let's say that urban NBS, the UNBS, are really gaining a lot of traction. So it is, as Lucy said, it's the gray-green infrastructure, or now green and blue infrastructure. And what it really relates to is that nature-based solutions that we can apply to in the cities. Of course, it's a question of also different definitions. So NBS include ecosystem services, and they do come from the ecosystem services perspective, because the definition of NBS is also to provide benefits to both biodiversity and also to humans. So I think the concept of ecosystem services is integrated within NBS as just a kind of larger umbrella.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Would anyone like to add or comment on anything we have mentioned so far? If not, then...
Yeah, sorry. I assume that everyone knows what NBS is. So thank you, Lucy. Yes, nature-based solutions.
Okay, so Elma Bešlić from CPCD said, thank you so much for great presentations. Center for Civil Society Promotion is implementing Project Think Nature. It is a 3-year project that will be implemented on whole territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Main objective of the project is to increase influence of civil society on environment protection, and by that to contribute to better environment protection and enhance resilience to environmental impact. and climate change in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to strengthen implementation of the requirements imposed by the EU and international agreements on the environment, climate, and energy. We just finished first year of the project, and we are working with more than 43 partner organizations for nature protection. Cooperation is important. Yes, definitely. That's why we are here. Maria asked, do you have activities specifically targeting ecosystem services? It was aimed for Elma. Mm-hmm.
Hi, so maybe it's easier if I just speak. So thank you so much for the great presentation. We do have it because we have the local organizations who are basically working and targeting local governments and trying to preserve ecosystems. So all different partners are influencing in a different way. So we have 5 pillars of the project, which are basically, one is advocacy. Advocacy is basically focusing on the protection and all of the sources and ecosystems and everything else that's happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and advocating for better laws and implementation of the local laws when it comes to the nature and their protection. We have Eco Youth, which is basically engaging as young people as we can in Bosnia and Herzegovina to raise awareness about the nature and trying to give them necessary information how they can influence their local communities. We have 9 eco hubs. Eco hubs are basically local organizations that are in different areas of the whole country, positioned in the different areas of the whole country, that are basically advocating and trying to protect different sources of nature. They're advocating for the protection of the rivers in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or stopping the construction of the hydrocentrals on the rivers, etc. We have eco media, because eco journalists, because we find really important that the media is also present in all of this issues and information, and how they will send the news and reports towards the public. So we are also having a great collaboration with the media in that sense. And what did I forget? Youth advocacy, eco hubs, eco schools. That's really important. That's the module that we are trying basically to transfer from, of course, EU countries. In fact, Sweden has the best practices when it comes to eco schools. So now we are in the process of selecting schools that will be part of the eco school system in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they will have their certificate of the eco schools. 36 schools will go through all of this process, and I think I basically said everything. So why we wanted to be part of this webinar, and why is it important? Because we are always trying to find new ideas and improve our project in a sense, to help our partners on the ground. Because for our local small organization, that's really important, because what's the main focus and goal is to strengthen their capacities. Because we, as the Center for Civil Society Organization, we try to help them. And that's basically why we see this webinar as really important, and why we wanted to participate. Because here we will gather a lot of great ideas and a lot of information that we are planning, of course, to share with our local partners, because that will strengthen their capacities, and in the end they will have information how together we can influence better situation when it comes to nature in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Okay. I would just like to thank Elma for this wonderful information, and I really hope that you will find useful information. Somebody already asked me about presentations, but after the webinar, we will be sending a whole package of different materials to you. So everything that we are talking about in those 3 days, we will it will be made available to you after the webinar. So we hope that this will be useful for all of you. And I would also like to just stress this importance of regional networking and cooperation, because in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia and Montenegro, in Kosovo, and the whole Western Balkans, we have some very similar issues. We encounter very similar barriers. So, you know, like this exchange of information and some cooperation, communication can help us overcome these barriers jointly. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And Melinda Mahmoud, I asked, could we also share the comments and replies, so the transcript of the conversations that were happening here in the chat? I find theme very interesting, the dialogue, questions and answers. Thank you. Maria, I will direct this question to you. But yes, we do have the option to do it. I'm sure that we will make some way of like aggregating it all into something that's a resource, not just a direct transcript as well, like one of the things that you can use as well. So just to check with Maria, yeah, okay, great. We will address this after the webinar, but we will make sure to extract everything that could be useful to all of you and send it to you in the days that will follow after the webinar. Elma also added the links to the website, the Facebook and Instagram page of the organization she talked about, so you can follow their work. Wonderful, thank you so much. And now I would like to, first of all, thank you. This discussion has been a really wonderful opening of our 3-day shared learning experience. And whether you actively participated or you kept your thoughts to yourself, I would also like to remind you of the survey that I mentioned earlier, and to ask you to fill it out if possible. And if there is anything else, do bear in mind that as the discussion goes on in the following 3 days, we will dive deeper and deeper into the topic. So there will be plenty more opportunities for you to participate, to learn, and to extract many useful tips for your future and for your career. Now we'd like to ask someone who has already introduced actually themselves and their insights to you through this webinar. And she is someone that people involved in this project always praise for both her expertise and her enthusiasm. So her name is Lucy Emerton, and she serves as the technical advisor to the ESAF project. She's an environmental economist specializing in ecosystem valuation and financing, who has 30 years of experience working across more than 70 countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. She is the Director of Economics and Finance at the Environment Management Group, a think tank and consultancy company providing policy and technical advice to governments, non-governmental organizations, and the private sector. Lucy, here you go. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Angela. And thanks, everybody. That was fantastic. I'm, by the way, hello from Sri Lanka is where I'm sitting at the moment. So I've been asked just to give a little bit of a recap. I think Maria gave her usual excellent presentation, and I think her starting point is really the starting point, the fact of ecosystem services as being nature's benefits for people. And that's like our starting point. It's going to be our middle point. It's going to be our end point. You know, Maria went over the ecological basis, and she emphasized that really critical understanding that well-functioning ecosystems are required and requisites for gaining these benefits to people. And I think that was a very good point she made, that what this means is the whole concept of conservation, sustainable use of nature, is integral to the whole basis of ecosystem services. And in turn, the whole concept of ecosystem services has many advantages to advancing the concept of conservation. You know, we've reached a point, I think almost everybody would agree, where we had to shift the paradigm from strict protection, exclusion, conservation, only looking at the biological, ecological side, to conservation for people that includes people, benefits people, involves people, and how ecosystem services have proved to be a really useful tool for optimizing conservation outcomes, but also resolving the trade-offs which we've traditionally faced. And that sort of neatly went into Sania's presentation, another fantastic presentation, thank you, Sania, saying, okay, we've got a very long history of recognizing ecosystems and ecology, but actually the concept of ecosystem services, the terminology of ecosystem services, has only actually been relatively recently integrated into mainstream discourse on research, planning, policy, and the rhetoric that surrounds it. Well, I say relatively recently. By that, I mean the last 20 years. For like an old lady like me, that's relatively recently. Maybe for younger people like Sania, that's not so recent. But no, but seriously, you know, I think that is important. The concept of ecosystem services has been around for a long time, but the discourse and the rhetoric is a much newer thing. And as Sania explained, it's become very influential. We've got a whole bunch of global networks, global platforms, intergovernmental platforms, international agreements, multilateral agreements, which have adopted and call for the concept of ecosystem services to be operationalized. We have the TEBs, the IPBEs, the CBDs, all of those other acronyms, which are explicitly attempting to factor ecosystem services into the way we go about conservation and, to a lesser extent, development practice. And we're also starting to see, we had the example from, I think, Slovakia, and we had the EU examples of the ecosystem service concepts being explicitly integrated into national policies and laws, international strategies and plans, into Montenegro's spatial planning process. Maria gave that example, into the biodiversity strategies and action plans. Sania talked about that. And Sania ended by saying implementation is a real challenge. We've got a growing recognition of the value of ecosystem services and their importance in policy and planning at global, national, local levels. But actually, so what? How are we going to make this thing work? How are we actually going to capture the benefits of nature for people? And how are we going to factor and embed a recognition that we need to conserve and sustainably utilize the natural resource base if we're going to keep on generating these benefits? And that is exactly our entry point for tomorrow. And tomorrow we've got a real treat in store. We've got Avni and Jenan, who will be really going on to the next level. Having looked at the more conceptual side, history, policy side today, they'll be saying, okay, so what? How do we take a step towards operationalizing these approaches in a practical context, applying them in the real world? So Jenan will be giving us a presentation and discussions thinking about how do we assess and value ecosystem services? How do we generate the information we need to guide decision making and policy making? And Avni will be looking specifically at mainstreaming. How do we mainstream ecosystem services into development planning, policy? And he'll also be talking about a very interesting approach, the IES approach, the integrated ecosystem services approach, and how that provides a tool to accomplish that. So I'd also add my interest and thanks to Maria and Sania, who, as usual, have given a fantastic basis, and say, please do join us tomorrow, because I think it'll be really interesting as we go from that sort of framework, bigger picture thinking to the so what? How do we use that and operationalize it in the real world? So for me, it was certainly a pleasure. And how lovely to see people from Western Balkans region. And also I see other parts of Europe, Asia, Africa. How amazing. Back to you, Angela.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for such a wonderful and concise summary of everything we've discussed in a little less than 2 hours of today's content and discussions. Before we finish, I would like to thank you all once again. And as Lucy mentioned, tomorrow we will continue our journey into this field by diving deeper and building on the theoretical foundations our lecturers have set today for you with more practical advice. So our speakers are going to introduce you to ecosystem services, assessment and valuation methods, and guidelines on how to integrate everything that we are talking about, everything that we have covered into the decision-making process. So just as Lucy explained, and actually tomorrow's speakers are here with us. So many thanks to them for starting from the beginning of the whole experience and not from the beginning of their own time to present. So our idea is that by the day 3 of the webinar, you will be equipped with an array of new methods and tools that are sure to help you introduce changes into how this topic is addressed in your workspace, and whether it's our idea for you to be able to do it, whether you're in the NGO sector, in an institution, or whether you are working independently and collaborating across sectors, depending on the type of the engagement. So if there are any questions that we haven't answered live, we will make sure to get back to them. If there is anything you feel that should be mentioned, please add it to the survey and we will read them today later in the afternoon. As Maria mentioned, you will get a package of all the tool sets and everything that we find can help you in your work afterwards in the days following the webinar. So if there is anything specific you'd like to see there, also we really value your feedback. So I'm also happy to see that we are right on time in case anyone has any final remarks to add, whether from the speakers or from other participants as well.
Well, I would just like to thank you. I must admit that this was a bit stressful experience for me because, you know, great expectations, lots of people from all over the world. This really kind of went beyond what we were expecting. So once again, I would like to thank you all, and also for not only being so attentive and positive and supportive, but creating this great positive atmosphere and actually sharing your thoughts and ideas. So that's exactly what we were trying to obtain, and thank you for you know, being here with us and participating actively. And I hope that this will continue in the next 2 days as well. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Maria. Many thanks. Looking forward to tomorrow. Great. We're happy to hear that. Thank you, Angela, efficient and effective moderator. Thank you so much, Sandra. Great work. Thank you. Great. Well, in that case, see you all tomorrow. According to our time zone, it's 10 a.m. So it's Central European time, 10 a.m. Wherever you are, you can check what time zone it is for you in the email we have sent to you when we emailed you the link. There was also a time zone converter there. In case you need anything, we are here. Email us or message on the social media. And once again, thank you for such a wonderful opening to the conversation we have started online. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you all, and bye everybody.
Bye everyone. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.